The morning sun cast long shadows across the remote training facility as Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez positioned herself behind the massive Barrett M82A1 rifle. The weapon, weighing nearly 30 pounds, seemed almost delicate in her steady hands. Around her, a group of Navy SEALs watched with barely concealed skepticism. They had heard rumors about the Army sniper who was supposedly breaking records, but seeing a woman handle their most powerful rifle was still an unusual sight. Chief Petty Officer Jackson stood 20 meters behind her, arms crossed, his weathered face showing the kind of doubt that came from 20 years of military service. He had trained hundreds of snipers, watched countless soldiers attempt to master the Barrett's devastating power, and seen many fail spectacularly. The rifle's recoil could knock an unprepared shooter backward, and its accuracy demanded not just skill, but an almost supernatural level of patience and control. Maria had arrived at the facility 3 days earlier as part of an inter-service training exchange. The program was designed to share expertise between different military branches, but she could feel the eyes following her wherever she went. Whispers trailed in her wake, conversations that stopped abruptly when she entered a room. She had grown accustomed to proving herself repeatedly, but the weight of expectation never got easier to bear. The target stood at 200 meters, a standard distance for Barrett training. Most snipers considered it a challenging but manageable shot under ideal conditions. The wind was minimal, visibility was excellent, and the range had been zeroed perfectly. Chief Jackson had deliberately chosen what he considered routine parameters, expecting a competent but unremarkable demonstration. As Maria settled into her shooting position, her body seemed to merge with the rifle. Years of training had taught her to control every aspect of her physiology. Her breathing slowed to an almost meditative rhythm, each exhale timed to the natural pause between heartbeats. The SEALs watching her noticed how completely still she became, as if she had transformed from a living person into a precision instrument. The Barrett's scope revealed the distant target in crystal clarity. Maria had spent countless hours behind similar optics, learning to read wind patterns from the slightest movement of grass, to calculate atmospheric pressure from the quality of light, to sense minute changes in temperature that could affect a bullet's trajectory. These skills had been earned through thousands of rounds fired in conditions ranging from Arctic cold to desert heat. Chief Jackson checked his stopwatch, expecting the shot to come within the next minute or two. Most snipers took their time at this distance, carefully calculating every variable before committing to the trigger pull. He had seen nervous shooters wait 5 minutes or more, psyching themselves out as they second-guessed their calculations. But Maria's finger found the trigger with surprising speed. The massive rifle thundered across the range, its muzzle brake redirecting gases in a spectacular display of controlled violence. The recoil, which had sent many experienced soldiers stumbling, seemed to flow through her body like water, absorbed and dissipated with practiced ease. Before the echo had fully faded, Chief Jackson's binoculars were already focused on the distant target. What he saw made him lower the glasses and look again, certain his eyes had deceived him. The bullet had struck dead center, creating a perfect hole exactly where the crosshairs had been aimed. It was the kind of shot that even veteran snipers celebrated, achieved with an ease that suggested it was routine rather than exceptional. The SEALs gathered around the spotting scope, each taking turns to confirm what they were seeing. Murmurs of appreciation began to replace the earlier skepticism. A perfect shot at 200 meters was impressive under any circumstances, but the casual way Maria had achieved it suggested capabilities that went far beyond the ordinary. Chief Jackson walked over to where Maria was already beginning to clean the Barrett, her movements efficient and practiced. He had been prepared to offer constructive criticism, perhaps some advice about breathing techniques or trigger control. Instead, he found himself curious about the woman who had just demonstrated shooting skills that rivaled his best graduates. The conversation that followed would change Chief Jackson's understanding of what was possible in the world of precision shooting. As Maria shared details of her training background and operational experience, a picture began to emerge of someone who had pushed the boundaries of long-range marksmanship far beyond what anyone at the facility had imagined possible. When Chief Jackson casually asked about her longest confirmed kill, expecting to hear a number somewhere in the 800 to 1,000 meter range, Maria's quiet response stopped him cold. The figure she mentioned seemed impossible. the kind of shot that belonged in movies rather than real military operations. But the matter-of-fact way she said it, without boasting or embellishment, carried the weight of absolute truth. That number would haunt Chief Jackson for the rest of the day, driving him to make phone calls and check records that would ultimately reveal a story more extraordinary than anything he had encountered in his decorated career. Maria Rodriguez grew up in a small town in Montana where hunting was not just a hobby, but a necessity for many families. Her father, Miguel, worked double shifts at the local mill while her mother, Carmen, cleaned houses to make ends meet. The family's dinner table often depended on what Miguel could bring home from the mountains, and by the time Maria was 8 years old, she was accompanying him on these essential expeditions. Unlike many children who showed initial fear or reluctance around firearms, Maria displayed an immediate and intense fascination with the precision required for accurate shooting. While her younger brother would grow restless after an hour in the blind, Maria could remain motionless for entire afternoons, studying the way wind moved through trees, learning to read the subtle signs that indicated an animal's approach. Miguel noticed his daughter's unusual patience and natural ability, but it was her grandfather, Eduardo, who truly recognized her potential. Eduardo had served as a Marine scout sniper in Vietnam, though he rarely spoke about those experiences. When he saw how naturally Maria handled a rifle, how instinctively she understood concepts like breathing control and trigger discipline, something awakened in the old soldier. The lessons began informally during weekend camping trips. Eduardo would set up increasingly challenging shots, teaching Maria to calculate distances by eye, to read wind patterns from the movement of leaves and grass, to understand how temperature and humidity affected bullet trajectory. These were not just hunting skills, but the foundations of military marksmanship, though Maria would not understand the distinction for years to come. By her 14th birthday, Maria was regularly making shots that impressed even the experienced hunters in their community. She could take a deer cleanly at 300 yards, a distance that many adult hunters considered their maximum effective range. More importantly, she never missed a shot that would wound an animal, understanding instinctively that ethical hunting demanded either a clean kill or no shot at all. High school brought new challenges as Maria struggled to fit in with her peers. Her interests set her apart from other girls her age, and her quiet intensity made some classmates uncomfortable. She found herself spending more time alone, often hiking into the mountains with her rifle to practice on targets she had set up at various distances throughout the wilderness. These solitary sessions became a form of meditation for Maria. Away from the social pressures of school and the financial stresses at home, she could focus entirely on the pure challenge of placing a bullet exactly where she intended. She began keeping detailed logs of every shot, recording weather conditions, distances, and results with scientific precision. The Iraq War was raging during Maria's senior year, and military recruiters were frequent visitors to their high school. When an Army representative spoke about opportunities in specialized fields, Maria found herself drawn to stories about scout snipers and designated marksmen. The idea of using her skills to protect fellow soldiers appealed to her sense of purpose in a way that college or traditional careers never had. Her decision to enlist shocked many people in her community. Women from their town typically became teachers, nurses, or office workers if they pursued careers at all. The idea of joining the military, especially in a combat role, was virtually unheard of. But Eduardo understood completely, seeing in his granddaughter the same calling that had driven him to serve decades earlier. Basic training revealed that Maria's shooting abilities were far beyond anything the drill instructors had seen from a new recruit. While other soldiers struggled with basic marksmanship requirements, Maria was shooting expert scores with almost casual ease. Her calm demeanor under pressure and natural leadership qualities quickly caught the attention of officers looking for candidates for specialized training. The Army's sniper school was a grueling test of mental and physical endurance. Students faced weeks of training in camouflage, fieldcraft, and advanced marksmanship under conditions designed to break down all but the most dedicated candidates. Many experienced soldiers failed to meet the program's demanding standards, but Maria thrived in the challenging environment. Her instructors were initially skeptical about training a female sniper, despite official policies supporting gender integration in combat roles. Practical concerns about physical strength Endurance and the psychological pressures of taking human lives created doubts that Maria would need to overcome through performance rather than words. The first major test came during a field exercise that required students to remain hidden in the same position for 36 hours while maintaining surveillance on a target area. Many students struggled with the physical discomfort and mental strain, but Maria found the experience almost relaxing. Her childhood spent motionless in hunting blinds had prepared her for exactly this type of challenge. When the shooting phase of training began, Maria's true abilities became impossible to ignore. Instructors who had been wondering whether she belonged in the program found themselves studying her techniques, trying to understand how someone so young could demonstrate such advanced skills. Her shots were not just accurate, but showed a consistency that suggested an almost supernatural level of control. Graduation from sniper school marked the beginning of Maria's transformation, from a small-town girl with unusual hobbies into one of the most capable precision shooters in the United States military. But her real education would begin in the mountains of Afghanistan, where the stakes would be measured in lives rather than scoring rings. The helicopter touched down in Forward Operating Base Chapman, just as the sun disappeared behind the jagged peaks of the Hindu Kush Mountains. Maria stepped onto the landing zone, her equipment bag heavy with the tools of her new trade, and immediately felt the thin air of the high altitude burning in her lungs. Afghanistan was unlike anything she had experienced. Even during the mountain hunting trips of her childhood, Captain Sarah Williams, the intelligence officer who briefed Maria on her first day, painted a picture of an enemy that understood the terrain with deadly intimacy. Taliban snipers had been picking off American soldiers with increasing frequency, using the mountainous terrain to engage from extreme distances before disappearing into networks of caves and villages that had sheltered fighters for generations. Maria's first patrol into the Kunar province was designed as an observation mission, a chance for the new sniper to study enemy patterns and become familiar with the unique challenges of mountain warfare. She was paired with Sergeant First Class David Chen, a veteran spotter whose previous sniper partner had been killed by an IED 3 weeks earlier. Chen's initial skepticism about working with a female sniper was obvious, though he kept his doubts professional. The patrol base they established on a ridge overlooking a known Taliban transit route offered commanding views of 3 separate valleys. For 2 days, Maria and Chen watched through their scopes as small groups of fighters moved between villages, always careful to stay beyond the range of conventional infantry weapons. The enemy knew exactly where American forces were positioned and seemed to treat them with casual contempt. On the 3rd morning, everything changed. A convoy of Humvees was making its way through the valley below when the distinctive crack of a high-powered rifle echoed off the surrounding peaks. The lead vehicle swerved violently as its driver slumped forward, and Maria could see soldiers scrambling for cover as more shots rang out from somewhere high above them. Through her spotting scope, Chen located the muzzle flash on a ridge nearly 1,000 meters away. The Taliban sniper was positioned behind a natural rock formation that provided excellent concealment, while offering clear shots at the trapped convoy below. American soldiers were returning fire, but their weapons lacked the range to be effective at such a distance. Maria studied the target through her rifle scope, calculating range, wind speed, and elevation differences with the methodical precision her grandfather had taught her years earlier. The shot would require her to engage at the maximum effective range of her weapon system, under combat conditions with friendly forces in immediate danger. Chen called out range and wind estimates, but Maria was already making her own calculations. She could see heat shimmer rising from the rocks where the enemy sniper was positioned, indicating how temperature differences would affect her bullet's trajectory. The wind was gusting unpredictably between the peaks, requiring her to time her shot for a brief moment of calm. The Taliban sniper fired again, and Maria saw another American soldier fall in the valley below. The urgency of the situation demanded immediate action, but hasty shots at extreme range rarely found their targets. She forced herself to maintain the patient discipline that had defined her shooting throughout her life, waiting for the perfect confluence of conditions. When the moment came, Maria's trigger finger moved with practiced smoothness. The rifle's recoil was sharp and immediate, but she remained focused on the scope, watching for the bullet's impact. For a long second that seemed to stretch into eternity, nothing happened. Then the enemy fire from the distant ridge suddenly stopped. Chen's binoculars confirmed what Maria already knew. The Taliban sniper had been eliminated with a single shot at a distance that pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible with their weapon system. The convoy below was already moving again, soldiers who had been pinned down moments earlier now advancing to secure the area. Word of the successful engagement spread quickly through the forward operating base. Long-range kills were uncommon enough to generate discussion among the infantry units, but a confirmed elimination at over 900 meters was remarkable by any standard. When the patrol returned that evening, Maria found herself the center of attention in ways that made her uncomfortable. Captain Williams called Maria into her office the next morning with a map spread across her desk. Red pins marked locations where Taliban snipers had been active, creating a pattern that revealed the enemy's strategy of controlling key terrain through precision fire. The captain explained that Maria's demonstrated capabilities made her a valuable asset in countering this threat. Over the following weeks, Maria's missions became increasingly complex and dangerous. She found herself deployed to remote observation posts, sometimes for days at a time, hunting enemy snipers who had been terrorizing American and Afghan forces. Each successful engagement added to her growing reputation, but also placed her name on target lists maintained by enemy commanders. The psychological pressure of taking human lives was something that no amount of training could fully prepare someone to handle. Maria found herself struggling with dreams and memories that intruded during quiet moments, forcing her to develop mental techniques for compartmentalizing the realities of combat. Letters from home helped maintain her connection to the world beyond the war, but they also highlighted how completely her life had changed. Chen proved to be an excellent spotter and became genuinely protective of his sniper partner as their mission count increased. He recognized that Maria's abilities were exceptional, even compared to other snipers he had worked with, and took pride in supporting her increasingly challenging shots. Their partnership developed the kind of trust that only comes from repeatedly depending on each other in life-or-death situations. By the end of her first deployment, Maria had accumulated more confirmed kills than many snipers achieved in entire careers. But the shot that would define her legend was still months away, waiting for the perfect combination of circumstances that would test every skill she had ever learned and push the boundaries of what anyone believed was possible in the realm of precision shooting. The mission briefing began before dawn in a cramped command post, buried deep within the mountains of eastern Afghanistan. Intelligence reports indicated that a high-value Taliban commander known as the Ghost had been spotted moving through a remote valley system that had previously been considered too dangerous for American forces to operate in. This commander had orchestrated multiple attacks on coalition convoys and was personally responsible for the deaths of dozens of American soldiers. Maria studied the satellite imagery spread across the briefing table, noting the extreme elevations and distances involved in any potential engagement. The target area was located across multiple ridgelines, with elevations varying by thousands of feet over distances that would challenge even the most advanced weapon systems. Weather reports predicted variable wind conditions and possible snow squalls that could reduce visibility to near zero within minutes. Lieutenant Colonel James Morrison, the operation commander, explained that a conventional assault on the target location was impossible due to the terrain and the likelihood of civilian casualties in the nearby villages. The only viable option was a precision strike from an observation post that could be established on an opposing ridgeline. But the shooting distances involved were beyond anything that had been attempted in theater. The numbers were staggering. The closest position that offered both concealment and a clear line of sight to the target area was measured at 3,247 meters away. At that distance, a bullet would take nearly 4 seconds to reach its target, during which time wind, gravity, and atmospheric conditions would all conspire to push the projectile off course. Most military snipers considered 1,500 meters to be the practical limit for precision shooting under ideal conditions. Maria's commanding officer, Major Patricia Hayes, privately expressed serious doubts about the mission's feasibility. She had witnessed Maria's exceptional shooting abilities firsthand, but the proposed engagement distance was beyond anything that had been successfully attempted by any sniper in the theater of operations. The risk of failure was enormous, and a missed shot would likely alert the enemy to their presence and compromise the entire operation. Despite these concerns, Maria found herself volunteering for the mission with a confidence that surprised even her. Something about the mathematical challenge appealed to her analytical nature, while the opportunity to eliminate a target responsible for so many American casualties provided the emotional motivation. She needed to attempt something that others considered impossible. The infiltration to the observation post required a grueling 3-day movement through terrain that tested every aspect of Maria's physical conditioning. She and Chen carried specialized equipment including a Barrett M82A1 rifle, modified with enhanced optics and weather monitoring devices that would be crucial for calculating the extreme range shot. Every piece of gear had been carefully selected and tested, but ultimate success would depend on skills that could not be purchased or engineered. The observation post itself was little more than a natural depression between two large boulders, offering minimal protection from the elements, but excellent concealment from enemy observation. Maria spent the first day studying the target area through powerful spotting scopes, memorizing landmarks and calculating precise ranges to multiple reference points that would be needed for the actual engagement. Weather conditions proved to be as challenging as predicted. Wind speeds varied dramatically between different elevations, creating complex patterns that required Maria to develop an entirely new understanding of external ballistics. She filled notebook after notebook with calculations, trying to account for every variable that could affect a bullet traveling such an extreme distance. On the morning of the third day, the ghost appeared exactly where intelligence had predicted. Maria could see him through her rifle scope, surrounded by bodyguards and moving with the confident stride of someone who believed himself to be beyond the reach of American weapons. The range to target was confirmed at 3,247 meters, a distance that represented the absolute limit of what physics would allow. Chen provided constant updates on wind, conditions and atmospheric pressure, while Maria made final adjustments to her rifle's elevation and windage settings. The calculations required were so complex that they pushed beyond standard military tables and into territory that required intuitive understanding, built through years of experience. Every shot she had ever taken, from childhood hunting trips to combat engagements, had prepared her for this moment. The first consideration was bullet drop. At 3,247 meters, gravity would pull the projectile down by more than 200 feet, requiring Maria to aim at a point far above her actual target. Wind deflection was equally challenging, as gusting conditions could push the bullet several feet in any direction during its 4-second flight time. Temperature, humidity, and altitude all added additional variables that needed to be calculated with mathematical precision. Maria's breathing settled into the deep, controlled rhythm that had become second nature during thousands of hours of training. Her heart rate slowed to barely 50 beats per minute, each pulse carefully timed to occur between breaths when her body was most stable. The rifle seemed to become an extension of her body as she found the perfect natural point of aim. The moment of firing came during a brief lull in the wind, when atmospheric conditions aligned as closely as possible with her calculations. The massive rifle thundered against her shoulder, its recoil absorbed by months of conditioning and practice. The muzzle flash was visible for miles in the clear mountain air, immediately marking their position for any enemy observers. For 4 eternal seconds, Maria and Chen waited while the bullet traveled across the vast distance separating them from their target. In that time, the projectile would climb to an apex hundreds of feet above the valley floor, before beginning its final descent toward the distant figure they could barely see through their optics. When the bullet finally found its mark, the effect was immediate and unmistakable. The figure Maria had been tracking through her scope simply disappeared, while his bodyguards scattered in confusion, unable to determine where the shot had originated. The impossible had become reality through a combination of skill, preparation, and circumstances that would likely never align again. The confirmation came through intercepted enemy communications as Taliban forces reported the death of their commander, from what they could only describe as an act of God. American intelligence analysts would later verify that the ghost had indeed been eliminated, bringing to an end a campaign of terror that had claimed numerous coalition lives. The news of Maria's extraordinary shot traveled through military channels with the speed of wildfire. Within hours, encrypted communications were carrying details of the 3,247-meter kill from Afghanistan to Pentagon briefing rooms, where senior officers struggled to comprehend what had been accomplished. The previous record for a confirmed sniper kill had been set by a Canadian Forces sniper at 2,430 meters, making Maria's achievement a quantum leap beyond what anyone had believed possible. General Patricia Clark, commander of all sniper operations in theater, flew to Maria's forward operating base personally to debrief the mission. The general had served for 30 years and had never encountered a case where operational reality so far exceeded theoretical possibilities. She spent hours reviewing every detail of the shot, from weather conditions to equipment specifications, trying to understand how such an extraordinary result had been achieved. Maria found the attention deeply uncomfortable. She had always been motivated by the mission rather than personal recognition, and the sudden focus on her individual accomplishments felt contrary to the team-oriented culture she valued in military service. When asked to explain her techniques, she struggled to articulate instincts that had been developed through years of practice rather than formal instruction. The psychological evaluation that followed was standard procedure for any soldier involved in high-profile missions, but Dr. Jennifer Martinez, the combat stress specialist, found Maria to be remarkably well-adjusted considering the extreme nature of her combat experiences. Where many snipers struggled with the personal nature of their work, Maria seemed to view her role through the lens of protecting her fellow soldiers rather than taking lives. Media attention was inevitable once word of the record-breaking shot began to leak through unofficial channels. Military public affairs officers worked to manage the story while protecting operational security, but Maria's achievement was too remarkable to remain classified indefinitely. When news outlets began reporting on America's deadliest female sniper, Maria's quiet life as a soldier became impossible to maintain. The fame brought opportunities that Maria had never imagined. Weapons manufacturers wanted her endorsement for their products. Military contractors offered lucrative consulting positions, and publishers approached her about book deals that could have made her financially secure for life. But every offer required her to step away from active duty, something she was not yet ready to consider. Training commands across all branches of the military began requesting Maria's expertise in developing sniper programs. Her techniques were studied and analyzed, with instructors trying to replicate the mental approach that had enabled such extraordinary performance. Some of her methods, particularly her intuitive understanding of wind patterns and atmospheric conditions, proved difficult to teach through conventional classroom instruction. Chen, her spotter, found himself elevated to near celebrity status as well. His precise wind calls and range calculations had been crucial to the record-breaking shot, and his partnership with Maria became a case study in sniper team dynamics. Military schools began emphasizing the spotter's role more heavily, recognizing that exceptional marksmanship required exceptional support. The psychological burden of fame began to affect Maria's performance in ways she had not anticipated. Every shot she took was now compared to her record-breaking achievement, creating pressure that made routine missions feel weighted with expectation. Soldiers who had previously treated her as just another team member now watched her with a mixture of awe and expectation that changed the dynamics of unit cohesion. Enemy forces also took notice of Maria's growing reputation. Intelligence reports indicated that Taliban commanders were offering substantial bounties for information about the American ghost shooter, who had eliminated their high-value targets with seemingly impossible shots. Maria's missions became increasingly dangerous, as enemy forces specifically targeted sniper teams in response to her success. The technical analysis of Maria's record shot revealed innovations that would influence sniper training for years to come. Her methods for calculating extreme-range ballistics incorporated atmospheric science principles that had not previously been applied to military marksmanship. These discoveries led to the development of new training programs and equipment that would benefit future generations of precision shooters. Awards and decorations followed, including recommendations for some of the military's highest honors. But Maria's most meaningful recognition came from fellow soldiers who had been saved by her precise shooting. Letters from infantry squads whose lives had been protected by her Overwatch missions provided validation that transcended any official recognition she might receive. The strain of constant deployment and high-stress missions began to take its toll on Maria's personal relationships. Friendships from home became difficult to maintain as the gap between her experiences and those of civilians widened. Even family members struggled to relate to someone whose daily reality involved life-and-death decisions made from distances measured in miles. Medical examinations revealed the Physical cost of Maria's extraordinary career. Years of absorbing recoil from heavy weapons had created chronic shoulder and back problems that would require ongoing treatment. The hypervigilance necessary for survival in combat environments had also created sleep disorders and other stress-related conditions that affected her overall health. Despite these challenges, Maria continued to volunteer for the most dangerous missions. Her dedication to protecting fellow soldiers overrode concerns about personal safety or career advancement. Each successful mission added to her growing legend while also increasing the psychological pressure of maintaining performance standards that seemed almost superhuman to outside observers. The military began developing specialized roles and equipment specifically designed to maximize Maria's unique capabilities. New rifle systems, advanced optics, and enhanced communication equipment were tested and refined based on her operational requirements. These innovations would eventually benefit sniper programs throughout the armed forces, but they were initially created to support one extraordinary soldier's ability to achieve the impossible. 3 years after the record-breaking shot that had made her a legend, Maria Rodriguez found herself standing before a classroom of aspiring snipers at the Army's premier marksmanship school. The transition from operator to instructor had been difficult, but a shoulder injury, sustained during her final deployment, had ended her field career and opened a new chapter, focused on passing her knowledge to the next generation. The students who gathered for her advanced precision shooting course represented the finest marksmen from across the military. Many had heard stories about Maria's extraordinary achievements, but seeing the quiet woman who stood before them challenged their preconceptions about what a legendary sniper should look like. Her approach to instruction was methodical and patient, emphasizing the mental discipline that had been crucial to her success. Maria's teaching methods incorporated lessons learned through years of pushing the boundaries of what was possible in precision shooting. She emphasized the importance of understanding environmental conditions at an almost intuitive level, teaching students to read wind patterns from subtle changes in vegetation movement and to calculate atmospheric effects through careful observation of light and shadow. The psychological aspects of long-range shooting received equal attention in Maria's curriculum. She helped students develop the mental resilience necessary to remain calm under extreme pressure while making decisions that could determine the outcome of critical missions. Her own experiences provided powerful examples of how proper mindset could overcome seemingly impossible challenges. One of Maria's most gifted students was Corporal Lisa Chen, a young woman from California who reminded Maria of herself at the beginning of her military career. Lisa possessed the natural shooting ability and mental discipline that could potentially lead to exceptional performance. But she struggled with the confidence issues that often affected female soldiers in male-dominated fields. Maria took special interest in mentoring Lisa, sharing not just technical knowledge but also the personal strategies she had developed for dealing with skepticism and proving herself repeatedly throughout her career. These conversations often extended beyond formal instruction time, creating a bond that transcended the typical student-teacher relationship. The advanced ballistics research that grew out of Maria's record-breaking shot had evolved into a comprehensive program that was revolutionizing military marksmanship. Her empirical discoveries about extreme-range shooting were being validated through scientific testing and incorporated into training programs across all branches of the armed forces. Universities were offering her positions to continue this research in academic settings. Writing the official manual on extreme-range precision shooting became Maria's most challenging assignment as an instructor. Translating instinctive knowledge gained through years of experience into teachable techniques required her to analyze her own methods in ways she had never considered. The resulting publication would become the standard reference for military snipers worldwide. Guest lectures at civilian law enforcement agencies provided Maria with opportunities to adapt her military experience to domestic security needs. Police departments facing threats from long-range shooters sought her expertise in developing counter-sniper techniques and training programs. These assignments helped her maintain connections to operational realities while expanding her influence beyond military circles. The documentary crew that arrived to film Maria's story brought unwanted attention that reminded her why she had always preferred anonymity. Cameras followed her through training exercises and interviews, trying to capture the essence of someone whose achievements seemed almost fictional. Maria cooperated reluctantly, understanding that her story could inspire others while wishing she could remain in the background. Physical therapy sessions helped. Maria managed the chronic pain that had become a constant companion since her injury. The repetitive stress of absorbing recoil from heavy weapons had created permanent damage that would affect her for the rest of her life. These sessions provided time for reflection on a career that had demanded everything she could give and more. Recognition from international military organizations brought Maria into contact with elite snipers from around the world. Conferences and training exchanges allowed her to share American techniques while learning from soldiers who faced different challenges in various theaters of operation. These relationships expanded her understanding of how precision shooting principles applied across different cultures and military doctrines. The scholarship fund, established in Maria's name, provided educational opportunities for children of military families, particularly those who had lost parents in combat. Managing this program gave Maria a way to honor the soldiers whose protection had motivated her throughout her career. Seeing these young people succeed academically provided rewards that surpassed any military decoration. Civilian shooting competitions offered Maria venues to maintain her skills while supporting causes she believed in. Veterans organizations and military charities benefited from her participation in fundraising events, where her reputation drew attention to important issues affecting former service members. These appearances helped bridge the gap between military and civilian communities. The marriage to Dr. James Rodriguez, a trauma surgeon who had treated wounded soldiers in Afghanistan, provided Maria with a partner who understood the psychological challenges she faced. Their relationship had developed through shared experiences in combat medicine, creating a foundation of mutual respect that could withstand the pressures of public attention and career transitions. Starting a family brought new challenges and rewards that changed Maria's perspective on her military service. Pregnancy and motherhood required her to reassess priorities that had previously centered entirely on military excellence. The birth of her daughter created new motivations for her work in training and mentoring other soldiers. The legacy of Maria's extraordinary career continued to influence military doctrine and training programs years after her transition to civilian life. Her techniques were studied in military academies around the world, and her record-breaking shot remained a benchmark that no other sniper had approached. But perhaps more importantly, her example had opened doors for other women seeking to serve in combat roles. Looking back on a career that had redefined what was possible in precision shooting, Maria found satisfaction not in the records and recognition she had earned, but in the lives she had protected and the students she had inspired. The quiet girl from Montana who had learned to shoot in mountain hunting blinds had become a legend, but her greatest achievement was proving that extraordinary performance could emerge from the most unexpected places.